Hello, everybody. So officially welcome to the first EVERSE Network webinar of the new year, 2026. This is in fact the first, but not the first ever, of the EVERSE Network webinar series that we are running in the context of the project EVERSE, which is committed to improving the quality of software in Europe research in an international context. So just before we actually introduce you to your presenter for today, I'm happy to introduce myself. I'm Eleonora Parisi, training officer for research infrastructure Life for Cherrik, and we also here have the EVERSE project communication officer John Apostolakis, CERN, and we're here with you today to provide support and reply to questions during the webinar. But just before we start, let me remind everybody in the call that every EVERSE webinar follow our code of conduct. And just let me briefly introduce you the principle we are very proud to stick to. So please use welcoming and inclusive language, be respectful of different viewpoints and experiences. So please feel graceful, accept constructive criticism, and assume others are acting with a positive intent when unsure. Focus on what is best for the community. Show courtesy and respect towards other community members, and use social media responsibly, respecting both individual and the organization that is hosting this meeting. So over to you, John.
Thank you, Eleonora. Today's speaker is Shoaib Sufi from the University of Manchester. He started his career as a system programmer and then software developer in the commercial sector, acquiring an ISO certified commercial background and experience in related matters of software quality. He joined the university in 2009, working on project management, including software, architecture, and quality processes in the university's eScience lab. His interests span creating and sustaining high-performance teams, distributed agile project management, and the promotion of best practice in research software projects. Shoaib led the UK Sustainability Institute community engagement activities and strategies for over 10 years. He's the current editorial board lead for RSQKit, and he's a project manager of EVERSE and Elixir Steer projects, which focus on research software quality, fellowship leader at the Software Sustainability Institute, and portfolio manager at the eScience Lab. Over to you, Shoaib.
Hi, thank you. Thanks everyone for attending. I'm just going to share my screen. Full screen. Just moving some of the Zoom things. Can everyone hear me? And can you see the slides?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I shall make a start. So I'm Shoaib Sufi. I'm going to be talking about the Research Software Quality Kit. Okay. So what is the Research Software Quality Kit? Well, the Research Software Quality Kit is has many aspects to it. So it's based on, in terms of principles, it's based on the EVERSE reference framework, which covers things like the multidimensional aspects of software quality. There's some mentioned here in terms of fairness, sustainability, and reliability. We'll go into those in more detail later on. It also takes the perspective of tiered software, analysis scripts, prototype tools, and software infrastructure. It looks at things from the perspective of different roles of people that are involved in research software. For example, researchers who code, research software engineers, PIs, and others. And it tries to capture cross-domain knowledge and cross-domain examples, such as from the idea of research software story, and some of the clusters, some of the European Open Science Cloud research clusters, such as ESCAPE and the LSRI, which includes Elixir. It then includes the quality practices. This is kind of like the meat of the of RSQKit in terms of the task pages and the guidance around research software, and the quality tools that help those practices, and links to training and other resources. Here you can see the homepage of RSQKit, so the link is there if you want to go and have a look. It's very much inspired by the RDM kit, which comes from the Elixir community, which was around improving research data management practices. So we've taken a similar approach, but we are taking a slightly different. As time goes on, we're taking a slightly different, approaching things in a slightly different way. Okay, so who's the audience for the Research Software Quality Kit? Well, there's many people that are involved in research software. So often when people think of research software, they might just think of the developer or a researcher who's doing some code, or maybe a PhD student. But there are many people involved in research software, from those people who are managing research software projects, so research software related infrastructures, to those running the infrastructures, to those making policy, to those acquiring funds, as well of course as the researchers who code and research software engineers. So RSQKit tries to address all of those individuals. Definitions are important, although definitions can be a cause of contention as well. So it's important to define what we mean by research software, what's in and what's out. So we take our definition of research software from, I won't say it's the latest, but one of the latest discussions on defining research software. As you can see, it's the title of the RDA Fair for Research Software Working Group has put it's a controversial discussion, because opinions do vary in terms of what research software is. So I'm just going to go through a couple of definitions here, and I think they're useful in terms of framing the content and framing the approach in the RSQKit. So the inclusive definition is like all code and software artifacts that are used, produced, or might be related to the research process in one or more stages of the research lifecycle, regardless of the layer of the software stack. Software that was not necessarily, including software that was not necessarily developed with the intention of being part of research, for example, a library for interfacing with a sensor, or software that ceased to be exclusive to a research domain. For example, certain programming languages came out of research projects. So that's very much an inclusive definition of research software. Then there's the exclusive definition of research software, which is well-identified software that is part of the research discoveries process, which might require specialist domain knowledge and is by itself a contribution to science and research. So a piece of simulation code, an analysis script for analyzing data from the Large Hadron Collider, for example, or software that was developed with the intention of being part of research. For example, some of the research infrastructure software. Now, for some, this inclusive definition would be more correctly termed software in research, how software is used in research. Whereas the more exclusive definition would be termed research software. Now, opinions vary. I mean, the RSQKit takes a bit more of an opinionated view and is very much more slightly towards the exclusive side. This discussion carries on, and it's important in terms of research software quality, because what's in and what's not. Because software is quite a broad, the term software is quite a broad umbrella, and some people want more specifics around what's included in software. For example, algorithms, machine learning, and AI come into that, and models. Okay, so there's a traditional notion of research software quality, or software quality. Whenever you mention software quality, people tend to think of industrial software quality, ISO, International Standards Organization, and here's some aspects of the research software quality covered by those, some functional stability, performance and efficiency, compatibility, interaction, reliability, security, maintainability, flexibility, and safety. And there's subcategories there as well, which I won't read. However, from the context of research, it's really not enough. This is very much kind of industrial focused, and there is there's an attitude that some of the researchers and those who run infrastructures have pushed back on, which is it's not just ISO. So the other aspects which are of great concern to people are fair software, open research, and then community development as well. So these additional ingredients form the basis of what we would say are the kind of research software principles, certainly the research software principles that drive the development and thinking around RSQKit. So in terms of fair software, for those, so findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So these was originally coined in the context of data, but then was work done by the Fair for RS group to see how does this map to software, in terms of metadata, in terms of protocols, in terms of exchange, in terms of licensing. And so here's a kind of a cheat sheet from the guidance there. So, but this is FAIR is very important for research. FAIR is also being applied to workflows, to learning resources, and other things. So FAIR is definitely part of the research discussion, research community. And then we have the broader aspects of open research. I guess in a nutshell, open research is about transparency, but there's different aspects of open research, and I think you'd be hard pushed to find anyone within the research software space who's not an advocate in some way or other of open science and open research. But it's important to realize that this has different aspects. So for different aspects and different drivers, for example, if you look at the right-hand side quadrant, the open science infrastructures are really important to the driving some of the requirements, driving some of the needs within RSQKit. And then you have the open scientific knowledge, for example, the open source software itself. RSQKit falls under this category, and then you have got open dialogue. RSQKit does a bit less on open dialogue, but we do try and reach out to the community of the communities within research, scientists, and those who focused on software, and kind of opens social engagement in terms of engaging with the broad community, making the research software quality kit not just about a small group, but trying to include others, but as well about promoting practices in the broader sense which increase transparency. Community development is also a very important part of and that community ethos. Many people would have the Fogel book about producing open source software, and would have looked at that for inspiration around how they go about open source. There was also later books on how to bring about community, and then there's the chaos.community, which is looking specifically at kind of a modern maturation of what are community health metrics in open source software. Admittedly, there is an overlap here between open research, open source research software, and sometimes the overlaps they're not 100%, but a lot of these are very relevant in terms of engagement, awareness. Funding is a very important aspect of research software, and the sustainability, and how welcoming people are. So these aspects are very important as well in terms of the worldview of the research software quality kit. Now, another notion in the space of RSQKit is this notion of the three-tier model of research software. at the beginning you have, or at the thing which the most exists is analysis code. People are writing in Jupyter notebooks or Python scripts or other Bash scripts or what have you. That is the most prevalent type of research software. Then you have prototype tools, which are a little harder to define, but they're going towards things which will eventually become research software infrastructure, or might become relied upon by many people. And so there's no notion here of what's important and what's not. There's notion here in terms of you tend to be more users for research software infrastructures, and there tends to be less of them than there are of analysis code. And this numbering system here we've used is somewhat arbitrary, but I think we just find it easy to refer to them as level 1, level 2, level 3 as they're going up in terms of reach. Then one of the things I think that's been interesting as part of the development of the RSQKit, and this is where the interaction with the science clusters, because in the context of the EVERSE project, one of the benefits of that we've had in terms of we want to create a catalog of things that help you to do research software better. Kind of what's the driver for that? Because often if you just come at it from a technology perspective only, there might be things that you miss in terms of relevance. But as this was co-created with people who are embedded in different science areas, this kind of modified the life cycle that we're using to describe what the different stages of research software and where the different tasks associated with different parts of research software would be relevant. So the original model was very focused on research software itself as an entity. But the model we developed here was more of an interplay between kind of like the research context and what's happening on the software side. As you can see here, there's two boxes with archiving. And why is that? Archiving is somewhat different for software, and archiving is different for a research paper, for example. And this has been a useful model, and it's being developed further. So don't see any of this as set in stone. Later on, you can see that we are very open for people to give their opinions and where things should be, how things should change. A critique of this, for example, is it shows somewhat of a steady state, but there is a complexity argument there. We don't want to make these things too complicated as well, but we're very open to opinion. Okay. So this is I was toying with whether to put this diagram in or not, because it's a little bit confusing. Well, why do you need to know this? Well, we're not trying to say, oh, look how impressive this is and it's amazing. We're just trying to say that there's one meaning that you can take from this diagram, it's that we're trying to be metadata driven, we're trying to reuse things. Those are the two aspects. So if you look at the types of content that exist inside RSQKit, we have the role pages, for example. We just talked about the scope and definition. We've got information about the research clusters and infrastructures. Tasks are very much at the heart of the content inside RSQKit, and we will be exploring those in a bit more detail. And contributors, of course, we want to be giving people credit for their contributions, and then research software stories. We also have a connection with tools, and this conversation here is about the research software quality kit. But one of the nice things in EVERSE is that there's different subgroups with different specialities, looking at different aspects of research software quality. Some are focusing on tools, some are focusing on dimensions and indicators. And I would say RSQKit is very much focusing on tasks and the research software story. So we're able to pull in from the other parts of the EVERSE project to enrich the usefulness really of RSQKit itself. You can see that we link out to the tech radar. The tech radar is a product inside EVERSE, which looks at the different dimensions of software and the different stages of software. We mentioned the tiers, and which tools would be applicable to help you in that particular stage and that particular type of software. And then we have a very link out approach. We don't try to reinvent, and we link out to other training registries. You can see some of this is dotted, some of this is future work, where we're trying to increase the linkages as we go along. So okay, so that all sounds great, but what does it mean to the end user? It means a more coherent and cohesive experience of finding information and seeing which information it's related to. It makes it easier to navigate. It makes it more enriching to contribute to. Uh, slightly fuzzy, but um, so as I mentioned, one of the things that we've most worked on in terms of linkage and as very much the heart of the content in RSQKit is the task, the thing which is the guidance which is going to help you to improve your an aspect of research software quality. Whether this is adopting fair software practices, you're archiving software, you want to learn about continuous integration, you're choosing languages, you're citing your software, you want to do a code review, information about workflows, readmes, documenting your project, a page on environmental sustainability, licensing software, organizing your software project, publishing your software, all about software identifiers, why they're important, how do you go about testing your software. What about containers? Many people are talking about containers and deployment. At least having some knowledge of those would be really useful, and as a start, and version control, of course. So these are common software tasks that help to improve the quality of your research software. So one of the important aspects here is that these are quality of practices versus quality of product. We're saying that it's almost like a proxy. So we're saying that if you do these quality practices, you're more likely to have a quality product, rather than if you do these quality practices, your product will be of quality. They might be fundamental. You might have wonderful testing pipelines, and well, I don't know if they'd be wonderful if your algorithm was incorrect, but you might still have the opportunity of not meeting some user requirements or having problems with edge cases. But they're more likely to be improved and caught if you follow quality practices. Certainly, if you didn't follow quality practices and you were just exchanging, looking at the other extreme, if you look just exchanging code via email, which has happened, and somebody asked me to email me some code once and says, "Oh, could you help me debug this?" If I can't build it, no. Yeah. So you would think that, oh, well, they've done it. It's all there. They've got their tasks, and that's everything. Well, not really, and I'll come to that later on in the later part of the interactive kind of after the main presentation, the kind of for those of you who want to participate. So it's important to look at the anatomy here and this connects to the linkage as well of a task page. So you have this set at the top, which is set of subtitle, description, considerations, and solution. What aspect of a thing, for example, licensing software, what is copyright and licensing would be a subtitle, and then the description and considerations and maybe a solution around those. What license, how why you should assign a license. And then there's this other aspect here, which is pretty much metadata driven. Each of the pages have a metadata heading, a page metadata section, and this is where some of the power of the linkage comes in. The reason I mention it is that you writing these pages and structuring these things, you get more value rather than just a set of text which you then have to manually connect to things. For example, you can list related pages. and not only related pages, there's ways of listing child pages or creating a kind of an index page of other topics which are related to, say, a more broader topic. Um, Using keywords to be able to search a training repository and then highlight the training which is relevant to this particular task. The tools and resources which are mentioned in the task and some of their definitions and links to those, and of course contributors, because you want to give people credit, and also how to cite the page. So that's useful. So there's an example here in terms of, you can see creating a good README and licensing software. These are two, and you can see the overall structure of those and which parts of those are auto-generated and which parts of those you'd manually write. I also want to talk about the research software story. So there was an EVERSE webinar all about research software stories, so I won't be covering them in that level of depth, but this is a really, a fantastic way of documenting research software. At the heart of it, it's trying to answer the question, what research software quality practices does your project use? Because often, if you're quoting things in the blue, if you're quoting things out of the blue, or just saying, "Well, oh, here's a set of tasks you should do. Here are the principles you should do," that's great. But seeing things in motion, seeing things for real, seeing the trade-offs projects have made, seeing how projects have made certain priorities and they're confident enough to put those out there can be really educating and really useful resource. So it covers what the software does, why it exists, who uses it and maintains it, how it's developed, where it fits with the research workflows, and which practices, tools, and decisions shape it. So that which practices, decisions, and tools shape it are really in the space of quality. So this is Michael Sparks who gave this, and there's a link to his repo. Happy for this. I might share the slides after the end of the first section, before we go into maybe some of the interactive sessions, so you can get some of the links if it's not been shared already. So it makes your research software more visible. They help people understand the value of your project. It's a investment in your future, as listed here. And so what's an anatomy of a research software story then? Well, these are the actual headings. You talk about the problem, what scientific problem is your code or problem in the research software space is your um, piece of software trying to solve, who is the user community, who's it for, what technical aspects, what platforms did you use, and libraries and systems and languages. And then we get into software quality practices, like which practices are you using? Are you using version control? Or do you have a license? Are you using CI/CD? And then a conversation about the developer community, and then tools. And the tools here are the quality tools that you're using to help improve quality. And then there's other aspects which, as it's research software, we talk about the fair and open aspects and documentation and sustainability and references. And then some parts are auto-generation, like the tools and resources on this page and contributors. I mean, this might sound like it's a huge page, and it takes forever to write, but not really. People have made progress in 1 week writing about their research software, and being surprised at how easy it's been, and beneficial as well. Because there's other side effects to doing this, as well as going out there and sharing your research software story. In terms of we're doing these quality practices, it can also act as a form of onboarding. The information that people have here is often in different places, or the guidance is here, the license is here, the code is, sometimes often where the license is, and there might be different governance documents. It kind of pulls things together. And sometimes the process can highlight things like, it's almost like you're doing this almost a type of self-evaluation. It can make you aware that, oh, hold on a minute, we think the license is clear, but it's not because it's in over here, it's not in the repo. And how do we do development? Oh, well, we've just been agreeing amongst ourselves. Actually, that's not written down anywhere. So it does highlight this, and it's when I said it's it's not difficult in terms of writing one of these. It's also what I'd call a cup of coffee read. You can have a cup of coffee and you can have read it, in a brief period of time. Yes, if you want to go and follow the links, that's a different issue. But yeah, so a very useful idea that originally came when we were trying to understand the way software was surfaced inside the research clusters, and then this morphed into this format, which it's been working well. You can see some of the examples there. Some of them come from the Elixir infrastructure space, and some of them come from Escape and physics, particle physics. Okay, so a little bit more on quality dimensions. So I mentioned that ISO wasn't enough from the perspective of the research community in terms of consideration. So how was that? How did that manifest then? How was that manifest? Well, we have a separate EVERSE itself has a separate indicators repo looked after by Daniel Garijo, who's on the call. So we have a fairly stable list of dimensions. And it's not that we want to throw ISO away. No, we want to build upon ISO. So you can see that some of the dimensions of software quality that we have listed here are in the from the ISO space directly. And you can go to this link to see the actual full list. But there's other things like fairness, open source software, sustainability, which very much come from our discussions inside EVERSE and inside the wider research software community. And then there's community aspects being considered as might one of the reasons is being considered is it might just be too cross-sectional to have its own dimension. And then we move on to the quality indicators. There's a lot more quality indicators are stable, but they're being added to. So the quality indicators are the ones which are used to annotate RSQKit pages. Which quality indicator does this link to? For example, you might have something around has a license that's linked to the licensing task page in RSQKit. So RSQKit is more like a guide to being healthy. How to all these task pages, how to make your software more healthy, rather than specifically diagnostic tests. But diagnostic tests have their place. And when I showed the linkage diagram before, you can see. I'll explain in detail when I'll explain a little bit more on the next slide. It'll make more sense. So pipelines are being prepared to check these as well, and these are connected with tools. And these are connected with tiers, for example, which indicator is most relevant for which indicators are more relevant, like they might be essential for a research software infrastructure. But if you're doing an analysis script, maybe they're recommended or just nice to haves. Because as the software gets more complex, you naturally would need to be checking more things. So more are being added. There's needs coming from the EVERSE project in terms of wanting to add these. There was some work done through Elixir and Elixir's biohackathon project where we collected a whole bunch of software indicators from different sources and then tried to disentangle them and take out duplicates, and even then you ended up with maybe 150 200 different indicators that were related to research software quality. So there's a lot at the moment. I believe there's about 29 that are inside the EVERSE repository. And other projects have been adding them. Elixir Stays is a project which is about research software specifically in the Elixir space. And so they've been using, they can see, rather than inventing their own repo, they can see that as EVERSE is overarching different research areas, they're contributing to that. There are other aspects as well to the indicators repo, crosswalks, identify sources to make things more rigorous. And one thing to note is that sometimes an indicator can appear in more than one dimension. So what does all this annotation of pages and linkage and connection of tiers, where does it get you? I mean, this is certainly not the final product, but this is an example of where that can get you. So this is one of the pages on a new page on RSQKit called the All Indicators page. And it really shows the connection between indicators, tiers, and task pages. So here, for example, you've got, you know, the second one, software makes use of version control. So that's the indicator. Does the software make use of version control? Quite a simple one. And you've got the definition of it. And then after the definition of it, the related page is using version control. So you can click on using version control and it'll give you guidance on how to use version control. And this is very new from last week or early this week, showing the connection to the data was collected by the manifestation on the RSQKit page, showing that for different types of code, analysis code, prototype tools, infrastructure, how relevant is it? So you've got the ones listed here are crucial, which is obviously, this you really should be doing. Versus, recommended versus good to have. There are some other one levels as well, but these are the most important levels. So having this annotation of pages, having this connected metadata allows us to do things which ultimately allows a resource to be a lot more useful for people. So I mentioned the research software, I mentioned the science clusters. I mentioned that in one of the benefits in the EVERSE project is that we have direct connection with research infrastructures and software engineers and researchers who code, making this more real and based in what people's practices are. The original research clusters are there linked from the science clusters, but we are even the RSQKit isn't limited to those research infrastructures and clusters. It's meant to be wider. So, for example, we've got ENVRI, which is environmental science, ESCAPE, physics and astronomy, LSRI, which includes Elixir, but other life science research infrastructures as well, and PANOSC and SHOC in the social sciences. So I guess what I'm saying is people are free to add their own research infrastructure here. So, a research infrastructure, it's really the ones that have some software element to them, probably a larger software element to them, but some reasonable software element to the way that they work. Their facilities, resources, and services that are used by research communities to conduct research. So sometimes people don't think they're research infrastructures because they don't call themselves a research infrastructure, but they are. It can include equipment, knowledge bases, archives, and e-infrastructure, data and computing, covering data and computing. So a research cluster is really what it says, a clustering of research infrastructures. So the idea there would be creating networks of research infrastructures in a given domain to allow them to work together and harmonize services and data. For example, they might be in the same area, maybe they got the same formats, maybe they want to get the same guidance, maybe they have certain sets of recommended tools. So the idea there is to really highlight the large research infrastructures which have got a lot of investment, and software is sometimes um, hidden, even though and data is sometimes hidden, even though it's a massive part of what they actually do. Um, so roles are very important. They're also very interesting because, as I mentioned, there's many roles, and these are the roles we currently have. I believe there's different people are involved in research software in different ways, and the different people who are involved in research software in different ways need to be thinking about different things. So a policymaker, for example, might not really need to think about continuous integration, but maybe they need to think about licensing and IP. Maybe they need to have some understanding of what the environmental sustainability or maybe workflow approaches are and how they're different. And then you have the principal investigator, and maybe even another one that might be missing there is a project manager who often steps in for the principal investigator and their concerns, and then research software engineer and researchers who code, and trainers as well, or how people who are training people in research software. So, what are their responsibilities? What are their main responsibilities? What are their challenges? What tasks from the task list that we mentioned should they be focusing on? So, um, these pages are there to give them giving them guidance. And if you see a role that's missing, some roles might be more domain specific. For example, there are a specific domain within the life sciences area, biocurator. What that you're not going to get a biocurator in particle physics. You might have an equivalent, but they're not called biocurators. So it's not just that the terms here should be generic. They can be specific as well, because it's trying to cover things which are appearing in the different domains of science. So they're within scope. Um, Talking about connection again, like I showed the all indicators page, we have an all tools and resources page. Here you have the list of tools. These tools are tools which are mentioned on the task pages. Many of them are to do with quality in some way, either assessing quality or as a quality practice. And some of them are contextual. So, and you can see the related pages on where they're linked. So in the future, we want to connect these to not only the task pages, but also research software stories. So if somebody is saying they're using a particular tool in a research software story, we could connect those connections to TechRadar. I'm not showing a diagram of TechRadar. Maybe that was something that I missed in this presentation, but TechRadar if you look up a tool there, you can see its other tools that are related to it. If you're interested in applying that tool, maybe you should be interested in applying other tools for that particular software tier. And related training as well, although the training appears on the task pages. So if you click on, for example, the continuous integration page, it should have lists of some of the training, but having some of the training listed here as well would enrich this kind of index page. Again, a lot of this is done using the special syntax. And again, the only reason to mention special syntax is it's not to so RSQKit is built on the Elixir toolkit theme or theme toolkit, which tries to offer these services, and there's a number of people who base their sites on that. I mean, there's some customizations as well, but it's to reduce duplication and increase the value of contributions. I think that's probably the most take-home message when you hear about all this metadata and linkages, to increase the value of the resources that are there and to increase the value of your contributions. Coming on to contributions, so we are open for contributions. There's a contributor agreement. There's a guidance on how to contribute, what not to contribute, contributors' responsibilities, and acknowledgement of contributions, for example, authorship. and aspect on ownership of content. Basically, you remain owning what you have, but you're openly licensing it. So gets around the issue of some people, depending on your institution, you own what you produce, and most cases the institution owns what you produce, in terms of intellectual property. But going back to things, there's a markdown way of doing this, which is we have a whole GitHub flow for the pull requests and standard way of adding to the site. But also we have document templates, open document format templates, which you can use and edit and maybe do those collaboratively and raise an issue, and that's another way. Okay, well, in terms of the future, there's certainly a push on navigation. As you can see, I've talked about the aspect of linkage, and some of in that original diagram with, I don't know if you won't remember it, but you can see some of them are dotted lines. So we're exploring how to make sure things are linked and make sure things are navigable. But also there's a big push on content. There's the second part of this, or the additional 30-minute addendum, will talk a little bit about contributions in a little bit more detail and how people can contribute. But it's really about more task pages and also promoting the idea of the research software story and getting more people to do that and see the benefit of that in terms of as a way of really promoting your software project, as well as looking at the quality practices and learning from others. And also there's been some experimentation with integration with AI in terms of LLM integration. That's still a little bit that was done. We had a prototype, but it's still early days. I think the navigation and content is probably our priority. Yeah, so before I go into the second part of the presentation, I will pause there. If there are any questions, I will stop my share for a minute. So we have a question here. Haven't you considered outsourcing as one of the tasks? So the tasks, I'm going to answer that in a roundabout way. So, so the tasks are to do with improving some aspect of research software quality. So if it's outsourcing, in terms of a way of my understanding of what you're saying, is a way of gaining extra resources on your project for a short period of time, to do some aspect on your project. I think that's a really good idea for a task page from a human perspective, because not all of these are things that you do with the code. These are things around the software as well. So, but there'll be an opportunity for you shortly to add that as an idea. Any other questions at this stage? Okay, well, I'm going to share my screen again. So I'm going to talk about your RSQKit. So RSQKit is not just about the EVERSE project. We've presented RSQKit at different at DRSE, there was a brief mention at RSECon, there was collaborations workshop, there's mentioning to projects, and there's been certain physics events that it's been mentioned at. So it's really out there to the project is helping seed it, but it's really open to other projects. We had a hackathon around RSQKit at the in Elixir Steers, which included new research software stories, tasks, and indicators. So it's really open for other projects. I can't say too much, but we're in some discussions with other groups who might be seeing RSQKit being used as their repository for research software quality practices in their department or in their group. So an idea of creating a profile where it links to certain pages for certain types of software that they're developing and saying these are sort of things that you should be done. And it's that's also another possible way of engaging. So I wanted to talk about task pages. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of existing task pages, but certainly they're not the entire set of task pages that even we originally identified. So I'll share this link. So we have a spreadsheet here, which is actually linked to a GitHub issue, but it's a little easier with a spreadsheet. We have a list of task pages here. So in these task pages, you can see that some are assigned, some are not, some are new, some are updates, but there's a number of them. For example, there's one here on how to manage your software project, or how to maintain your software project, how to collaborate on an open source software project. Nobody's put their name forward to be an author or reviewer, and there's no a related GitHub issue or pull request if it's done. And as you and these a lot of these topics were identified some time ago. Some came from additional topics gained from taking just showing RSQKit to different communities. So we are collecting new ideas at the bottom. So if you want to add in column D any new ideas, for example, the one on outsourcing would be a good one to add. But also we're looking for people who might be willing to act as authors for some of these pages. And if you're an author for this page, it doesn't mean that you have to deliver exactly what that title says. You have some artistic freedom to edit the title slightly, but slightly. Or if the other one is if that page did exist, would you be willing to review it? That's the other one. So I want to give to this part, I wanted to give people 5 minutes, 3 minutes to have a look and have a look through these. And you're also welcome to add comments in a comment box if you feel that, well, I think this topic misses the point, and it should be called something else. So yeah. So are we all right to do that, Eleanor? Give people 5 minutes to have a look through these, have a read through these, see which ones they might be willing to uh, be an author of, or see which ones they might be
Yeah.
willing to review.
I'm wondering, do we have priorities in terms of this list?
So how this list was originally developed was we had a brainstorming session and we got information from other places. And people are free to, while we're talking, free to have a read through. And then we got people to prioritize which ones they would like to see. I mean, one of the original drivers for it was, from your own research group, what would you like people to know about? And so that was one of the original drivers. And then we went through, it was internal. We went through some of the groups in EVERSE and asked them to prioritize it. In a sense, maybe I would say maybe top 30 of these, maybe the top 30 of these, the 30 rows are actually had some level of priority. But at this stage, I think it's a case of interest. Have you got expertise in this particular area? Would you be interested in doing this? So I think if I'm not sure if I can add a timer, but let's say we give people 5 minutes
Yeah, sure. I have a question for you, Shoaib.
Yeah.
Why we, because by now we are more or less in we're reaching half of of the the EVERSE project right now. We 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 have built already a lot on the RSQKit with you
Mm.
and the editorial team. At this stage, would you say that something similar already exists for research software, or is it something that it's um, looking at all these different pages, I'm sure that there are other uh, there is for sure other interesting sources, and you mentioned some of them at the beginning at the presentation. But
Yeah.
I think that what I want to stress and understand from the point of view of the editorial team is whether it's something that the RSQKit really highlight is the interdisciplinarity of the research software quality. Perhaps there are sources, but they focus on one of another scientific aspect, sorry, scientific domains. So what is your general feeling about the gaps that their RSQKit is filling in?
Um, it's a great question, and I think it touches on a number of factors. Some to do with acknowledging additional existing resources, and some to do with uh, and the same thing. When do you write new things? So I so I do want to highlight that we have a notes column here, and it's a great point that you bring up. We're currently having a conversation inside the editorial board team because there's differences of opinion inside the editorial board team. From, for example, one, I wouldn't say extreme, but one perspective that if it's the only place you go to for information, it should be sufficient to get you going. And the other one is, and that might include some aspects of if there's little bits of code snippets and stuff and they come a little bit out of date, it doesn't matter too much as long as you link to uh, existing material. Um, and there's the other aspect to it is like we shouldn't repeat things which are elsewhere. So we've had this conversation internally where we're trying to balance those two. And we are putting some guidance together, which we'll explore further at the EVERSE General Assembly meeting, and maybe we can put that, and that'll be then once that's agreed, it'll be on our website for other people to comment on, for the network to comment on, and others in terms of what do you include in task guidance, is it enough, for example, to give a conceptual overview of something when you know a resource already exists? I'll give an example. In Turing Way. Turing Way is a great resource in terms of research software practices. The Netherlands eScience Centre, which is also a partner in the project, in the EVERSE project, which helps contribute towards which is hosting RSQKit and developing RSQKit, have moved some of their guidance into Turing Way. So if we then say, oh no, we'll rewrite it from scratch. Well, no, I mean, if existing resources are there, we want to link to them. We want to link to the best resources. And but if somebody goes to the page and it's just a link, go here, it's not that welcoming. So it's kind of that balancing act between having enough conceptual information there that people are interested to learn more or get some kind of overview of this, and then going off to the relevant resources. So there's some value in in the pages. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does, of course, and I also, of course, see the value in the fact that you don't just volunteer and giving your time in editing, adding content on the kit per se, but you contribute to a larger ecosystem because, of course, the RSQ kit is not the only, even it's one of the
Mm.
major outputs of the project, but there are other services that we've been um, developing in the context of EVERSE, right? So it's a really a community that is building up. Although if we really stay now in the matter of really concretely contributing to the RSQKit, what are the major obstacles that you've seen so far? It's just a matter like really finding time basically for people. Is it not value enough in um in the role to contribute to documentation about research software or is it maybe, for example, when I think about research software stories, for me it was like a novel concept, so it's something
Mm.
that people are not yet used to.
Yeah.
It's a sort of new way to think about research software as well. So what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on this?
Great question again. I mean, I can give a very, almost tempted to give a very stuffy answer and a very sensible answer as well. The stuffy answer would be like, oh, well, people, of course they should do this, you know. Why are they not doing this? No, and that's the kind of stuffy answer. But the sensible answer is I think it's an alignment of I think it's an alignment of aims. For example, the uptake of research software stories. There's sometimes some of uh, the research clusters need to produce this, but when they get involved with it, they realize it's not as bad as they thought. And other people find value in it because they want to be able to publish something about their research software somewhere, and what quality practices they're using. As you mentioned, it's novel, and that and for us, I think it's a case of pushing that idea that this is a very useful thing to do, and getting people on board. And I think there is some momentum building for that. For the task pages, it's a little because, for example, if you're writing a piece of software and I say, well, do you want to promote your software to others? Do you want other people to see what you're doing? Then, yeah, you can publish a software paper about it. You can do all these other things about it. But here's another place where people are looking. And also, it comes out from a quality perspective. And it won't take you that long. And it'll be another way to promote your project, and it will help you with people with your with onboarding and learning about what you're doing. So it can be a good sell, and that alignment of goals can help people produce content. For the task pages, it's more difficult. We've done task-based hackathons at a number of different places, and people don't want to write a page on how to conduct static analysis. They just don't. And even though, or dynamic analysis, even though there's great tools that do that out there. But what we have seen is if people do particular things, if people are writing workflows, if people are benchmarking workflows, if people have a particular, some things are just fundamental. It was interesting that some of the fundamental pages around version control and software identifiers and testing, they were some of the first pages that got written, and it's because people think they're, no matter what, they think they're really, really important. So in some senses, what's there is what people think are really, really important. Um, but yeah, it's more of a difficult sell, and it's more of an alignment of aims. But if you're going to one of those interesting ideas, is around if an organization or a department or a group of people decide that we're going to follow certain research software practices. Because you can see in one of the clusters like Escape, for example, they have sets of guidelines about how they develop things and how they go about doing things. But if you want to why not use RSQKit as native way of expressing what you want to follow in terms of quality, and then what are the issues there that would perhaps then increase the likelihood of certain pages being written. I mean, the other one is, yeah, the, yeah, that's my view on that. So, um, yeah. So I don't know if people have had a chance to, while I've been talking, to had a chance to have a look through and add any comments. Um, Over here, for example, in column D, if you wanted to, I know there was the one on that was mentioned earlier. Don't know if Antonio is still around, but you feel free to outsource them. I'm assuming it's that. I'm assuming that's the topic. If it's not, feel free to edit it. Okay. Right. If I think that's given the people enough time to have a look through that. So I will go on to the next one, and the next one is the research software story. So there was a whole webinar, which I believe is it out? Yeah, Eleanor, that one, the recording for that one, or is it coming out soon? The research software story
It
one.
is coming out soon.
Okay, so there's an hour-long presentation by Michael Sparks from Manchester Department of Physics about research software stories, what they are, and those sorts of things. But again, I've mentioned them a number of times. So if you've got a software project that you want to document and you want to document your quality practices and have this is a great way to do that. And you are if we look at, you can do it via you can fork the repository, you can do it via a pull request. And I don't think we've got any stories outstanding at the moment. Yeah, we've got one. We've got the Open eBench research software story, which is currently being drafted. So there is one on its way, and that's a piece of research software infrastructure from Elixir, which one of the things it does is it looks at different health metrics around research software, and we're on the and one of the nice things is that some people really like the format. So I'll give an example. There's about 20 or 30 different communities looking at different types of analysis inside the life sciences in Elixir, single cell, 3D biological information. And they all have analysis scripts, workflows uh, associated with the work that they do. And one of the steps that's been taken in Elixir Stairs project, again, as a source of who like this approach, is they have this idea of a community scoreboard, and their community scoreboard is like what types of quality practices are people using, what types of quality practices do people want to use. But this is a great way of baselining that to explain the context behind the research that they're doing, and then feed that into a broader community, uh, um, and help onboard people into knowing, well, the things that we're talking about, how are they manifest actually in specifics. So that's some really interesting work which is being planned now and should make some good progress in that by the summer. So um yeah. So generally, and we don't have to go the full half past, but generally we can have some further discussions as well. Generally, review and comment is welcome. If you have a look at the Software Quality Kit website, if you have a look around, even some first impressions that, oh, I expected this, I expected that, you can raise an issue. You can get in touch with us as well. And the editorial board says, I don't know if says the editorial. Oops, here's the editorial board members. And then we all get the email if you email RSQKit, and you can say what your comments are. Maybe you don't like our definition of research software quality. Maybe you've seen a more up-to-date one. Maybe you've seen one which is more involved with AI. Maybe you want to come and talk to the editorial board about something. Maybe we're missing. There's an existing resource that we're missing. I mean, we're aware of many of the Netherlands Science Centre resources, the resources that come from Elixir, the resources that come from Software Sustainability Institute, Turing Way, and but there might be other sources of information. Somebody sent us a list of open source best practice topics, and it was quite an involved list at different levels of complexity. But we're still kind of working our way through that, and to try to see which topics might be relevant. Again, it creates topics which then you have to get authors to write. But yeah, we're very open. Just going to read this message from Sanam. Sometimes people don't know they're doing with research because they develop this to resolve their problem for them and so forth. But it's a good guide also to give value to their effort. Oh, thank you. Yes, that's true. I have heard from scientists that, oh, I don't do software, I do scripting. Okay. So, you know, so yeah, some people call it different things and then don't realize that they're actually it is they are doing software. So yeah,
Shoaib, sorry, I have an immediate follow-up because it's like Sanem really read my mind, basically. Um, Honestly, I didn't know you guys met once a week. It's a lot. Meaning it's a lot of effort. And I have a really concrete question because um I imagine that if you want to put such an effort towards this task, um you have to have kind of the support of your institution, of your employer.
yeah,
In this case, could be university, could be research, or
yeah,
research team whatsoever. How this could be um, a challenge, or because you need to have the support. If you don't have it, you kind of have to explain that indeed research software has a huge role
yeah.
in what you're doing, whatever the scientific domain that you're working on. Do you have any tips on that? Like how new people could join you? Of course, not. We're not asking everybody to join us once a week, but even like few hours of their time, they need to justify this if you want this to be as part of their job role, right?
Yeah. So there's kind of an in project answer to that and an out project answer to that. The in project answer to that is, if you're down on the work packages and you have a certain percentage of your time allocated to it, and on top of that, I won't just say it's just that, and some people have a real passion for it, then you can make time for those for that. I mean, the editorial board, to be honest, most half of the editorial board is an infrastructure board because there's a lot of infrastructure work that needs to happen to help link things and value. And as Daniel's mentioned, we meet at least once a week. So we also have a get it done session where we actually do co-working, and then sometimes one other team member every couple of weeks we'll sit down and have another meeting about it because yeah, it does require a lot of to get these things off the ground, even with some funding, requires a lot of effort on infrastructure, on content, and on the promotion or publicity. But you're right, you need your managers and those who are allocating your time need to understand that. So that's kind of like an in project answer. And I know people are on different percentages. And then from the where there's projects which out project, are there projects which overlap, like Elixir Steers has overlap, but still the editorial board helps form a bridge between them and contributing to the project. And then you've got really kind of like, okay, an organization which has just come across this, no money for it, no, but it is they're interested in research software quality. Well, then it might be that there is an alignment of goals. For example, they want to introduce more research software quality practices, or they want to promote their practices, or they want to check their practices. And well, this is a place they could either promote it, or this is a place where they could document it, because it's an open platform, so on GitHub openly licensed, so there's no fear of it disappearing in that sense. Um, so that's another way. But in terms of if you want to make a contribution towards research software quality, you could write a story. You could write a task page. You could just comment. You could just say, look, there's these other things happening. This is what I know about research software quality. You could even start an awkward conversation like, you know, uh, ISO, I think you're wrong. ISO is the only way. And we would be interesting to have a help kick the tires of our understanding as well. So yeah, great question. But yeah, there are different ways and reasons of interacting, and yeah. Yeah. So, and there's a lot of research software out there, sometimes more than you imagine, and sometimes the people who write it, again, for those who've been involved in a number of years, you think, oh well, people give credit to research software. I work in an organization who kind of understands it a bit better now, but there's many, many people who still this it's not an understood entity. Um, so, so if there are um, any other questions or discussion points you would like to raise? Nope. Okay. So what's left for me to say is to thank you all for attending. And here is the list of all contributors. It's an ever-growing list. So if you would like to be on that list, and we would like you to be on that list, please feel free to contribute. And that would be great. And that's my final slide, as it says, final slide.
Yeah. I think that in fact there is a very interesting upcoming opportunity to contribute, at least to engage with us, not only about the RSQKit that we just presented, but more in general about the project. And it is the EVERSE community engagement event that is taking place at CERN on the 5th of February. The registration, both in presence and online, is still open. Let me put it in the chat. Maybe you can share it on screen as well, Shabid. Yeah, thank you very much. This is the current agenda. So as you can see, we have very packed event. It's a full day event where all the different services and product produced by EVERSE we are working on are going to be not only presented but also demonstrated in the specific demo sessions. But also we're going to have representative of the different science clusters, meaning experts that sit in between the software area and the science area of all the different domains that are contributing right now to the EVERSE project. So great opportunity to see you in person, hopefully, or otherwise you are very welcome to join us online. I'm surely be there. I hope, Shobi, you're going to be available. Yeah,
I'll
great.
be there in person. Yeah.
You're going to demonstrate, to give like a demonstration or RSQKit?
Yeah, there'll be an RSQKit update. I'll have to, there'll be an RSQKit update. And
yeah, and then also the community, the lightning talks, I think that they're going to be somehow connected to, well, the possibility to onboard new research software stories, correct?
yeah.
Great. Thank you, everybody.